I'm pretty sure all of us heard about the infamous Demon Slayer mark, but what is it exactly? The Demon Slayer mark is a mysterious and powerful symbol that appears on the bodies of exceptional demon slayers. It grants its wielder immense physical and mental abilities, allowing them to stand a chance against the strongest demons, including the 12 Kazuki and Muzan Kibutsuji. The mark usually awakens under life-threatening conditions, so you can't just awaken it whenever you want. In Tanjiro's case, it manifested during the battle against Gyutaro. Tanjiro and the gang would have been dead if not for the mark. The mark, however, places immense strain on the user's body, often reducing their lifespan. Historically, it was believed that those who awakened the mark would die before the age of 25. Now, what if Tanjiro had awakened the mark in the first episode? How would that impact the story? And would his journey be any different? In this video, we have compiled 3 different scenarios on what if Tanjiro awakened his mark earlier. Scenario 1. In this scenario, the story begins just like the original timeline as Tanjiro heads to the nearby town to sell coal, and upon returning, he comes across his dead family and Nezuko turns into a demon. They eventually come across Giyu, who deems Nezuko a threat and decides to kill her. In the original timeline, Giyu had decided to spare her, but things are different here. He reprimands Tanjiro for his weakness and attempts to kill Nezuko, deeming her a threat. But Tanjiro's unyielding determination to protect his sister triggers something deep within him. The intense emotions, the grief, the love for his sister, and his desire for justice ignite a latent power in his bloodline. In a heated moment, a fiery mark blazes across Tanjiro's forehead, sharpening his senses and boosting his speed. Giyu, stunned by this rare Demon Slayer mark, realizes Tanjiro is no ordinary boy. With newfound strength, Tanjiro blocks Giyu's blade and promises that he will find the demon who did this to his family and take revenge. Hearing all this, Giyu decides to test his resolve and skills. He hands him a wooden stick and battles him. Despite being a noob, Tanjiro manages to hold his own against the likes of Giyu. Realizing his immense talent, Giyu sends Tanjiro to Urokodaki for training. When Tanjiro reaches Mount Sagiri, Urokodaki immediately notices the mark. Recognizing its significance, he pushes Tanjiro harder than any student before. With the Demon Slayer mark amplifying his physical and mental abilities, Tanjiro progresses rapidly. He masters water-breathing techniques at an unprecedented pace and even begins to sense the threads of fate that guide his sword strikes earlier than expected. However, the mark comes with its dangers. The strain on Tanjiro's body is immense, and Urokodaki warns him about its risks. Despite this, Tanjiro is prepared to sacrifice his life for his sister. He eventually passes the entrance exam and becomes a demon slayer. Now, I'll keep things short here because we have other scenarios as well. With the Demon Slayer mark, Tanjiro's power and skills develop much faster. He becomes a key figure in the fight against Muzan early on. The bond between Tanjiro and Nezuko deepens as his mark resonates with her, accelerating her control over her demon instincts. Tanjiro's mark draws the interest of the Hashira, especially Kyojuro Rengoku and Muichiro Tokito, who see him as a prodigy. The awakening of the mark puts Tanjiro on Muzan's radar much earlier. Muzan becomes wary of the boy, recognizing the resemblance to Yoriichi, the legendary demon slayer who nearly killed him. This change in the timeline creates a more intense and fast-paced story, where Tanjiro's path is filled with greater challenges and opportunities. The early awakening of the Demon Slayer mark not only enhances his physical abilities, but also amplifies his compassion and resolve, making him a beacon of hope in the fight against demons. Scenario 2. In the previous scenario, we discussed that Tanjiro becomes a ray of hope for the Demon Slayers, and his presence allows them to defeat Muzan way earlier. However, things are a bit different in this scenario. In the previous scenario, we assumed that Tanjiro manages to save Nezuko just in time. However, in this one, Giyu ends up killing her. Tanjiro couldn't do anything. As he was grieving over Nezuko's lifeless body, a shadow appeared above him. It was Giyu Tomioka, and seeing him ignites something inside Tanjiro. A searing heat exploded across Tanjiro's forehead, and a flame-like mark emerged. His senses sharpened, and with newfound speed, he attacked Giyu. But the power wasn't enough. Giyu quickly overpowered him. Helpless, Tanjiro watched as the blade fell again. Nezuko's body went still, her blood staining the snow. Frozen in despair, Tanjiro's burning mark flared brighter, igniting a hatred that consumed his heart. Being the cold-hearted guy he is, Giyu tells Tanjiro to stop being a bitch and think about his future. He has realized his potential and wants him to become a demon slayer. He also points out the mark on his forehead and its connection to the legendary demon slayers of the past. Giyu directed him to Sakonji Urokodaki for training. Tanjiro, on the other hand, just wants revenge. He cannot forget the sight of Giyu piercing Nezuko's neck, and this sight is engraved in his soul. Though his heart burned with hatred, Tanjiro recognized the need to grow stronger before he could act on it. He swallowed his grief and followed Giyu's instructions, using his anger as fuel to push himself forward. Under Urokodaki's training, Tanjiro advanced quickly, his flame-like mark granting him unmatched strength and endurance. Outwardly, he was kind and disciplined, but deep within, his hatred for the Demon Slayer Corps simmered. Tanjiro manages to pass the final selection rather easily. Killing these measly demons was no big deal for him. Over the years, Tanjiro rose through the Demon Slayer Corps, gaining trust while secretly gathering information about its leaders and weaknesses. His power and mastery of water breathing grew, but every victory felt hollow, fueling his hidden resentment toward the Corps. Tanjiro's moment came during a critical mission. The Corps was planning a large-scale assault on Muzan Kibutsuji, the Demon King. Tanjiro volunteered to lead a key part of the operation, using the opportunity to set his plan into motion. Amid the chaos, he confronted Giyu in a fierce battle. His Demon Slayer mark burned brightly as he overwhelmed Giyu, but the victory brought no peace. Consumed by years of pain and hatred, Tanjiro walked away from the shattered Corps, empty and broken. Tanjiro leaves the Corps after this and becomes a legend who betrayed the Corps and killed some key members. Scenario 3. In the previous scenario, we discussed that Tanjiro ends up joining the Demon Slayer's Corps following Nezuko's death to take her revenge. However, things are a bit different in this scenario. After the tragic death of his sister Nezuko at the hands of Giyu Tomioka, Tanjiro's grief overwhelmed him. In a moment of intense sorrow and rage, his Demon Slayer mark awakened. He attacks Giyu, but ends up losing the battle. With no other option left, Tanjiro escapes into the forest. He takes down multiple demons who attack him, including a lower moon, without any training. This news reaches Muzan as he approaches Tanjiro and tempts him to become a demon, offering him a path to vengeance and power. Tanjiro, who just wants revenge, accepts his offer and becomes a demon, leaving behind his humanity. After becoming a demon, Tanjiro's power grew rapidly, surpassing even the most powerful demons. He rises through the ranks and even becomes Upper Moon 1, surpassing the likes of Kokushibo. Tanjiro became Muzan's most trusted ally, destroying any demon slayer that dared to stand in his way. The world knew him as a ruthless demon, a force of destruction, bent on avenging Nezuko's death. The Demon Slayer Corps quickly learned of Tanjiro's transformation. Giyu, devastated by his role in Nezuko's death, blamed himself, but was determined to stop Tanjiro from causing more destruction. Kanao, once close to him, tried to appeal to his humanity, but Tanjiro's hatred burned too brightly. In a fierce battle, Tanjiro easily overpowered Kanao, leaving her with a warning. There would be no mercy for those who stood against him. Tanjiro's power continued to grow, and he led Muzan's demons in a war against the Demon Slayer Corps. The Hashira prepared for the ultimate battle, but they knew this would be no ordinary fight. Giyu, torn between his duty and his guilt, faced Tanjiro one last time. Despite his overwhelming sorrow, Giyu was determined to stop Tanjiro, knowing that this was the only way to prevent further chaos. As the Demon Slayer Corps launched their final assault on Muzan's fortress, Tanjiro stood at the forefront, leading the charge. The two sides clashed in a brutal, world-altering conflict, the outcome uncertain. In the end, Tanjiro's vengeance consumed him completely. The once kind-hearted boy who sought to protect his sister became a terrifying force of destruction, leaving behind only ruin and sorrow. The Demon Slayer Corps was forced to fight not just to save humanity, but to end the nightmare Tanjiro had become. But even in the face of destruction, Tanjiro's soul remained lost, his humanity extinguished by the flames of grief. As Muzan's reign crumbled, Tanjiro stood victorious. But at what cost? The world was forever changed, and Tanjiro had become both a symbol of vengeance and a warning of what happens when grief and rage consume the soul.